I'm not used to being wired like this. All right, so we're ready to get started?
I'll go ahead and announce you. Okay, my name is William Berg. I'm president of the Sacramento Heritage Inc. Board of Directors. And thanks for coming for the second installment of our Preservation Academy series. And the idea is providing both the theoretical and hands-on knowledge about historic buildings and historic properties, both how to list them, how to identify them, and then how to maintain them. One of the big priorities of this workshop, the window workshop, is to provide some knowledge base and hopefully encourage people to gain the skills of rehabbing old windows, because wearing one of the other hats that I wear, president of Preservation Sacramento, probably our number one question is about windows. How do I replace windows, or how do I restore windows, or how do I hire a contractor? Especially that last one, how do I hire a contractor to restore my building's windows, because there's only one or two people and they don't ever answer my calls because they're so busy. This suggests that there is a market, not just a market, but a large market in a city with 33 historic districts and more on the way, and with citywide design review, which requires that you get a permit from the city to do window work, and requires that if you have wooden windows that you restore them rather than repair them, whether or not you live in a historic district. All of this says there is a lot of money to be made restoring windows. The more people who have this skill, the more the people who own these historic properties can get that work done, and the more employment we're going to have. And it's almost a recession-proof industry. Also, I wanted to say thanks to a couple of organizations. Preservation Sacramento sent out emails and helped promote this event. Sacramento Historical Society provided this fancy PA, which is a little bit fancier than one we had last time, because it will allow Tim to move about and do his thing while you'll still be able to hear him. This is definitely going to be a hands-on workshop, and it's going to be an active Q&A workshop. So if you have questions, ask Tim or ask me. We're going to have a break about halfway through. And the first part of the workshop is going to be theory, and the second half will be practice. So Tim White is the restoration specialist. He works for California State Parks, doing all sorts of restoration of historic properties, furniture, and other. If it's wood and beautiful, then Tim's probably involved with restoring it, or has restored it, or it's on his list of things to restore, because he's very much in demand too. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Tim White, and thank you all for being here today for the Preservation Academy.
Yes, and really thank you for coming out today. Sunday, and you know, this is kind of a nerdy little subject, so I'm glad you made the time to come here. And I probably don't have to tell you that we probably all want to save our old windows, because seeing new plastic windows going on an old building is just horrible. So I think the last time I gave one of these workshops, you know, I kind of talked about why you don't replace windows and you rehab them. But I think we all want to rehab them, right? So we can get into the nuts and bolts of how to do it. So as he said, I work for State Parks, and I've only worked for State Parks for 3 years. Before that, I was an independent contractor, and I started doing a lot of window work because there was a lot of it to do, and I enjoyed doing it. And I picked up a lot of tricks, and I've been messing with old windows for 25 years or so. In some form or another, I've done well over 100, probably less than 500, but I've seen a lot of consistent patterns with old windows. And so I'm happy to share with you what I know. There might be better ways, there might be different ways, but anything that we do to make the windows better is really a good thing to do, because the preservation community doesn't have the marketing and finances that the window industry has. And that's why so many people get sold on, you need new windows, gotta get rid of those old things. So anyway, so I'm gonna show you a few photos of some projects that I've worked on, just kind of for more background, and feel free to ask any questions. There's some good stories. I've done a few full house and, you know, large building, like rehabbing all the windows, and I learned a lot. This is one on F Street that It was one of those classic bungalows that just, had all kinds of tenants throughout the years, and when the rent was cheap in the 80s, it was just, this building had everything wrong with every window. So I learned a lot on that one, but I made them all functional again. And this is a house on 20th and F that redid all the windows on that. Great to save those. Actually refinished that front door too, because that's a new window. Did this one on 39th Street, another complete rehab, and went a little bit deeper on that, and it was really nice. This is the interior of one of those windows, and what you can't see because you don't see the details, is I actually made the window screen, the interior window screen, and matched the finish and all that stuff, and used the same species of wood, so it just kind of blends in, and it doesn't look wrong at all. Functions like a new window. Did this house in Curtis Park. Another one turned out really well. This one is an apartment complex on 19th Street. They had replaced all the windows with vinyl windows, and it looked terrible. They wanted to, and all the windows just degraded because they didn't last very long. So they were doing all this work on the building. They wanted to put in new windows, but the city said, you can't just put in new windows, even though you had new windows in there. You have to go with the historic look and the same type of window. So I got hired to at least redo the front, and I took out all the old windows and rehabbed the old ones and had new sashes made, and put it back the way it should look. So that was a fun little project. This is a really fun project that's close to my heart, and I shouldn't even really bring this up publicly because this is technically illegal. There are some mining cabins out in the middle of Nevada that I've been visiting for 25 years, and technically the BLM owns the cabins, but unless they're deemed significant historically enough, they're not going to do any work on it, and they're not going to put any money into it. So they'll just fall down. We've seen buildings fall down. So some friends of mine and I started doing what we call guerrilla preservation. We put roofs on the buildings. We started redoing the windows and doors and that sort of thing. And so it's a fun little project, but technically it's illegal. What we're doing is technically wrong. This one, the upper sash was in place, the glass was just broken, and the lower sash was missing entirely. But I took an old window sash, took it all apart, and refit it to the correct size, put it all back, and kind of blended the paint to where it looks like it's always been that way. I'm pretty happy with that. The interior, same kind of thing, just making it look like it's always been there, so nobody would know that it's illegal. This cabin, as you can see, there's no window frame or anything. The whole shebang was going. If it's just missing the sashes, you can build new sashes and put them in, and it's a whole lot easier. Without having the frame, it's trickier. So of course, in my spare time, I built a frame and used all reclaimed lumber and built the sashes and all that and put it all back in there and aged it to where it looks like it's always been there. Which is kind of what I enjoy doing with parks, is making stuff look like it's always been that way. So worn stuff looks worn, and so at the Stanford Mansion, this window was literally falling apart. It was rotting and just kind of coming apart. And one of the first jobs I did when I started working with the state was I made the two sashes. And recently, as in the last couple weeks, the window next to it, we're having the same problem with that. It started coming apart, the bottom rail's falling off, everything's rotting, and the glass, which is incorrect, is all about ready to fall out. So I put plywood up there and I started making these sashes. And as we talk about how to do stuff, I'll explain how I actually made those and the choices that I used in making those. And this is the interior of the same window. It just looks correct, which makes me happy. Those are the windows. This is Sutter's Fort. It was last year we repainted all the interior trim and walls, and these windows, Sutter's Fort was basically, the bulk of it was reconstructed in the 1890s, so they're not 1840s windows, but Sutter's Fort is from 1840s. These windows are in bad shape because they've just haven't had maintenance, and they could be saved, but when you're doing a large repainting project and you're dealing with lead abatement, they can do more damage to the old windows. just in the painting process. So some of the ones that were more questionable, I just made new ones and saved the old ones. So we could always repair the old ones and put them back at some point. But for now, to get us through this project, making new ones and making them look correct, I felt like it was a good way to go. And these are the new windows, and they just look like new versions of the old windows. So, pretty happy with that. This is a fun project. As you can see from this photo, I'm at the rail yards and I'm on a lift to where train cars look that big. That's really high. You start getting a little squeamish. If you look at the top upper right, you see that one window. What was happening is panes of glass are just falling 70 feet in the air and like crashing. Not really a safe environment. So, we needed to do something, and there are hundreds of these windows in that building. So the areas that they're working over, and some of the worst ones, we needed to do something right away. So I got all of the lumber, that's the close-up of the one that we took out. Gives you an idea, like when you see it up close, it's not so good. So, yeah, and that's, down on the ground. So I had all the lumber milled and basically built the first one and taught a bunch of volunteers how to build these, and they're currently got about 30 of them made, and they're working on getting them up there, which is the biggest feat. Making them is easy from my perspective. Getting them up there and getting them installed is the hard part. But I feel really good about that project because some people were saying, well, can we put some plastic up there, put some plywood or something? And the person at the rail yards and myself were like, no, let's restore it, let's do it right. It's the correct thing to do. So we're using, the same species of wood, and we're trying to salvage the wavy glass where we can. And we're also matching the paint and just taking it way too far than we should have. But this is kind of, close-up of what was failing. Like, this is what 100 years of a lot of wear and weather and no maintenance happens. So this is at Solomar in Pacific Grove. It's a Julian Morgan building, and it's one of the jewels of that whole area. And for State Parks, we did a window restoration workshop where we took 10 of the worst windows that were facing the ocean, and we did a whole workshop on restoring them. And that was really great to work on this building and work on those windows. And in the process of that class, we had a lot of people who obsess over windows and talk about different products and talk about different methods and disagreeing about just little things that really don't matter because we're still trying to make it better. So, but it was really good to be with like-minded people because I've obsessed with all this stuff for years, and to be with other people that obsessed about it too and think and kind of compare notes. It was a unique experience. This is a pretty recent one. In Old Sacramento, there are some of the buildings that are really old, but they were, up until the 1970s, they were just used. And then in the 70s, when they made Old Sacramento, they did some restoration work on a lot of those buildings. Unfortunately, when you have that quantity of work, the quality tends to go by the wayside. These windows literally fell apart when I took them out because the way they kind of cheaped out when they put them together in the 70s, and they just degraded really badly. I was asked if I could fix them, and I just said no. Because that was what I was running into. They were just so rotted, water was just pouring into them. And I said, I can't fix them, I can make new ones. So I started the process of milling the lumber, milling all the pieces, and putting them all together, and putting them back up, and it's they just look right now. And this is the close-up of that window from the 39th Street house, just showing that with the screen. That's a brand new screen. And we can talk about screens and we can talk about doors if we have time at the end, because I have a lot of opinions about that stuff too. I have a lot of opinions in general. Not all good, just What? I just noticed the cat. And I'll go into details about different materials, because right there you can see there's an unlacquered brass or brown screen that you can get, and it's closer to the traditional stuff, and it just lasts and looks way better on the houses. So,
Again, one that's on the inside or the outside?
that's one that's on the inside. My house has ones on the outside, and those are more common. This is a screen door I made recently. You know, kind of going into that whole door thing. I think that's it. So. All right, so like Bill said, what we're going to do is we're going to just kind of talk about what I do for windows, and then in a little while we'll take a little break, and then I'll really start going in deep with rebuilding all the pieces and like all the different materials and methods that I use. If you wanted to start building window sashes, that sort of thing, we can talk about it. So that's basically the way it's going to go. This window I took out of my house, put in a cheap plastic vinyl window. Just kidding. Actually, what I did, where this window was I wanted to put in French doors, but I can't just go to Home Depot and buy new French doors. So I went to Urban Ore in Berkeley and got some salvaged French doors and built the frame and built everything to where it looks like everything else in my house. And it was the same era. And so I put the French doors in, they look like they've always been there, which is a really satisfying feeling. One of the problems that I've seen when people replace their windows is they tend to take the window sashes and chuck them. And the window frames, they always just put new windows in them, or they do whatever to make the new windows work. And they don't realize, or sometimes they'll take the old sashes and they'll say, hey, we saved the windows. The sashes are only half of it. If you really start doing this work, you realize that the frame takes as much or more work than the sashes. So when I took this out, I thought, I want the whole frame and everything, because if you have an opening where you pop that in, it's like a brand new window. So, I do most of my work from the inside, just because on a tall building or even on a shorter building, it's just messy on the outside and it's just harder. And you can't get to everything from the inside. I'll show you how I take it apart. Typically what you run into is, and this window was great by my eyes because it didn't have tons of layers of paint on it, because most of them are just like coated with paint. So it makes it a lot easier to work on. And so typically, when I come to a window like this, and imagine that it's just like coated with paint. This stuff is always painted, the ropes are painted or broken, and this stuff's all painted. But typically, you're gonna have finish nails holding, this is called the stop. And the finish nails hold the stop in place. And this is usually caulked shut. So I just try to find that edge and do a really clean line with a really fresh blade and do a nice slice to kind of like get through that caulk and get through that paint layer. 5-in-1 tool, kind of go in there like that, and you pull it away and you try to find where your nails are. Like you very gently, you don't want to like just rush into this and just break that piece off. If you try to figure out where the nails are, then you can get really close to it without damaging it. And then you put the cat's paw in there and you start prying away. And I try to start at the bottom or the top and kind of slightly bend it to where that piece will come out. Does that all make sense? Have any questions? You're all really quiet, so feel free to ask questions. Yeah.
So the trim that would have been over that, like the interior casing, are you able to save that frequently, or like if you're carefully picking it off, or how often do you use it?
A lot of windows are different, and I really don't want to take the trim off because it's really caulked and painted and everything else, and it's a lot of work to put it back right, and you can. It's just harder. It's easier to just take the stops off to get the windows out. So what I'll show you is like, because you need to get into this pocket and put new ropes in and that sort of thing. So you don't want to take the trim off if you can help it. Some windows, they don't have they don't have this little pocket in here, this little door that allows you to tie the weights on. And if they don't, it's really heartbreaking because you have to take the trim off. But some manufacturers, most manufacturers, I'd say 80, 90%, they have that little pocket door where you can access and you don't have to take the trim off. So it's great. So anyway, you very gently get that off and you're happy that you didn't break it. If you do break it, typically a nail is gonna mess you up and it's gonna crack and you're gonna have a nice clean break at that piece. You can glue it back together and it's gonna be fine. You can also, if you're a woodworker, or as I've said before, if you're doing this work and you're not a woodworker, befriend a woodworker, because they can help you make the pieces that you need and do certain things, and it makes life a lot easier. But this is a really easy piece to make.
So quick question, Matt, you're probably gonna cover it, but if you take the stops off and you don't have weights attached any longer because they're, they're rotted, but the sash moves, you need to pull the sash out before you do anything, right? Because it's gonna fall on you? Or is it gonna be trapped by something else?
When you take the stop off, whatever's happening with the windows, if they're open, if they're up or down or whatever, you still should be fine at this
Okay.
point. Because this just allows you to get into the window.
Okay.
Or a 20 by 20 box fan, you sit that sideways.
A lot of times what happens is when these tracks are painted and the ropes are broken and that sort of thing, people usually have shot screws underneath the,
Yeah,
under
to hold the back
and-
sash up,
And
yeah.
that keeps that sash up there, so, and you're trying to figure out how to get it out, and oftentimes you just always look for a screw, because that's usually what people did.
Okay.
So, I like these windows because they have the classic setup of the knot goes in here, and then the rope just comes up here. It's great, because sometimes, and you can see this one was nailed, people would have nailed the knot into the sash to keep it secure. If it's a really good setup like this, and you have a really good knot, because of the pressure holding it together, that knot is never gonna, it's never gonna come loose. So you don't need to nail it. I'd say half the time they are nailed. It's just the way it is. It makes it harder to get out because, especially if you're up high and it's a big window, you're trying to you have to get that nail out while you're holding this wonky thing. And once you get one side down, you have to do the other side. It's just tricky, but be careful. This is a tricky spot. And there's a lot of luck that comes with it. Similar kind of thing, you're just assuming that there's a bunch of paint. But you want to get this edge. Same thing, just a sharp, sharp, sharp blade. And then you want to clean that up, and you really want to cut at the top and the bottom, because that's usually where it's really going to come with paint and clog.
So that's the second stop, or?
This is called the parting bead,
Okay.
and I don't know why, but just know it's the parting bead. So there are a few different scenarios. Once you have that broken free, sometimes there are little nails, and just a few, like maybe 2 or 3 or 4, that hold this piece in. Sometimes they're just pressure fit, and with all the paint, they're really pressure fit. And they're tricky to get out because it's in a dado, and also you're gonna hit this piece. So when it's all gunked up with paint, they really just wanna fall apart because it's a small piece. What I've done, there are different ways to do this. I don't have my nail pliers, but I take nail pliers and oftentimes just try to find a spot where I can pull it apart. And you just pull it apart the best you can. If you can get it like that, then you can do that same thing where you start to pry and find the nails and pry next to the nail and work from one end to the other and try to get it all out. And don't try to, if you're under it here, don't try to get it all the way out here when it's still stuck at the top and the bottom, because it will break, it will break. And this is a piece, unlike the stops, that you can make easily, but it's more work. If you can get this out in one piece, it's better to save it and reuse it. Typically, say this window's been painted a gazillion times, once you get it out of there, this end is painted, this end isn't. So you clean up the edge to where it can go in that way, and you're happy with the beauty, because then, you know, you sand that up and then put some linseed oil on it, you're like brand new. So, but if these do break, and they, you know, they could be rotted on the bottom, they could break, befriend a woodworker and ask that person to help you make some new ones. Because typically, you mentioned New Home Building Supply on Franklin Boulevard, they sell this stuff. It's slightly undersized.
Oh my.
And it doesn't work, and it's frustrating. I make my own because I can make it the correct dimensions.